Recent archaeological discoveries in the People's Republic of China are changing America's concept of its own history. From ancient historical records, we hear of a Buddhist monk, Hu Shen, who by his own written account appears to have landed on the American continent in 458 AD. Did the trail they took lead them to Central America? Now, new discoveries off the coast of California may furnish proof that America was discovered by Chinese explorers over 1,000 years before Columbus. The rocky coast of Cape Mendocino in Northern California is one of the places where some scientists believe Chinese explorers landed on our shores many years before Columbus. Larry Pearson, a marine archaeologist, searches beneath the seas for evidence of such voyages. Larry is one of the few respected scientists who believe there is an element of truth to be found in ancient Chinese tales. The Chinese memorialize their legends by staging historical pageants. One story tells of a skillful magician who, when sent on a secret journey by his emperor Qi Huangdi, returned with reports of a land far away across a vast ocean. Presenting his report, he stated that it was a land of mighty rivers and mountains. Here, strange people dwelt whose gods granted them the gift of the elixir of life. He pleaded for this gift of immortality for his master, but it was denied him. He claimed it could only be parted with in exchange for rich gifts. 1,000 noblemen and beautiful maidens were required, together with skilled craftsmen. Excited by the prospect of eternal life, the emperor gave leave to proceed. The magician gathered together a large group capable of starting a new colony. They built the necessary ships. The fleet set sail and was never heard from again. 10,000 miles away and 2,000 years later, Larry Pearson travels the coast of Northern California to investigate Indian legends. He hopes to find tales confirming contact between Asia and pre-Columbian America. His first stop is the American Indian Center at Humboldt University, where he consults with Indian expert Bobby Lake.
The Pit River Indians and the Pomo Indian tribal group of northwestern California have an ancient myth or legend or folklore that talks about a giant bridge which went from this area across the ocean to another race of people who they felt or thought or believed were Indians, but their skin color was different. It was more yellowish. And the way the old legend goes is the world was purified by water and everything on earth was destroyed. And many of the high priests and religious leaders knew this was going to happen, so they gathered the people together and they moved up high to the high tops of the mountains. And while they were up there, some of the visionaries or prophets began to see another race of people who looked like Indians but were yellow-skinned. So somehow or another, you might call it mental telepathy, they started to build a bridge from this part of the continent, while that other race of people started to build a bridge from the other continent. And somewhere in the middle of the ocean, they linked up together and they communicated with each other. And what really signaled all of this was the rainbow. As the yellow race of people left and they were going back, a rainbow came up. And they said, someday this physical bridge will be gone, but remember us, our brother, because the rainbow will always be there.
Nearby, where the Klamath River meets the sea, Larry seeks further information from the local Indians. Florence Shaughnessy has lived beside the Klamath River all her life.
We're called the Yurok people, but in Indian, we're called Pulik La. We are the people that walk by the ocean.
To add to the evidence of Asian influence, there are legends of shipwrecks along the northwest coast.
The story was that they found parts of Chinese junk along the coast near Tillamook, Oregon. And so they had the divers go down, and they did find that it was old. So they figured that the Chinese came over, got caught in a storm, probably all perished, or maybe some of them swam ashore. And they say that some of those Chinese must have survived, and then they went inland, and there was Indians, living all around the coast there, that they intermarried there, because some of the Indians from certain parts of Oregon are slant-eyed, and their skin is just a little different color than the Bronze Indians.
The Japanese current flows eastward along the 40th parallel, then merges with other currents and reaches the coast of California. There it splits, one half flowing north to Alaska, the other moving south along the coast of Mexico. At the division, a churning occurs which is so furious that many vessels riding upon it have been dashed to splinters.
These rocky headlands, such as the point of land behind me, Trinidad Head, on the northern coast of California, are the kinds of obstructions seafarers traveling this coast would have encountered. These sites, of course, are historically known as very high hazard areas, graveyards of ships. It is just such a place on the coast that you'd expect to find the highest likelihood of the remains of ancient craft, particularly the Japanese and Chinese vessels that we know now have been here in pre-Columbian times.
In response to a letter, Larry has come to examine these odd stones discovered by Dick Young, a fisherman who brought them up in his nets off Cape Mendocino. It is known that early Chinese seamen drilled holes in large stones and used them for ship anchors. Many similar stones have been found in Californian and Mexican waters, but most turn out to be naturally formed.
In the case of these two, they're apparently formed in the deep ocean floor. These particular stones are natural. The nucleus could have been a whale bone, a whale vertebrae, but the shape of the hole, the ridges inside, there is no taper here. There are subtle nuances in the hole itself to lead me to believe that they are indeed natural formations rather than being man-made.
As a scientist, Larry is used to such setbacks. The real frustration is not occasional misleading evidence found along the shore, but the fact that China lies across 7,000 miles of ocean. Further, China's doors have been closed until recently to Western scientists. On a recent trip to the People's Republic of China, the In Search of crew filming in a rural area found some large old stone rollers on a farm. We were interested to learn that these rollers had often been used as ship's anchors in early times. They are still used by some Chinese riverboats today, ships of ancient design called junks. They are basically river vessels used by fishermen for centuries. In the famed Peking Museum, we found evidence that much larger seagoing junks once existed in the distant past. The skeleton of a giant sailing vessel has been uncovered. A fleet of ships of such size could have carried thousands of passengers. Remnants of this huge rudder indicate the ship was hundreds of feet long. A modern Chinese artist depicts how a fleet of these huge junks would have looked. Marco Polo told of long sea voyages made by the Chinese as they traded with such faraway places as India and Persia, but these were coastal trips. Could Chinese junks have survived long voyages in the open Pacific? To prove such a voyage possible, journalist Kuno Knoble and a group of fellow adventurers built a sailing junk as close as possible to ancient design. They named it the Taiki. Their plan, to catch the Japanese current to the North American coast, then southward to Central America. Despite calms and storms, all went reasonably well, until midway. They discovered the ship was under attack by thousands of sea worms, burrowing into the wood and undermining the hull. It was then that the typhoon hit.